Hey YouTube, so this is going to be from a series that I do on TikTok where I talk about things in League of Legends that they've either changed or old stuff that they used to have. This is going to be parts 11 through 20. There is a clip that I do take from another YouTube video and I'll have the link for that down below. But yeah, I hope you enjoy. Okay, so does anybody remember like the old game mode Dominion? And for those of you who don't know, it's kind of like another game mode similar to ARAM or Summoner's Rift, or if you played back when this was a thing, it was also like Twisted Tree Line. So the point of it was to capture pillars similar to Skarner's passive, where you would just sit there and try and take them. The person who got the most, I think, pillars, like, there was like a certain amount that you had to complete, you won. And I think there was also like special items similar to how there was for Twisted Tree Line, if you played during that. A lot of people also use this map to play hide and seek. If you don't know what hide and seek was, it was just a bunch of rules, where you hid in bushes or you tried not to get captured, you know, similar to like hide and seek, and there were rules like playing no stealth champions. You can tell who actually played Dominion because when they took that game mode out, they gave you an icon if you, I think, played or won 100 games. So, if you ever see those people, ask them how Dominion was. So does anybody remember like the different game modes that like were based on the different skins? For example, there's one like in Dominion based on like the Sand Guardian skins, or there was one for Blood Moon that was on Summoner's Rift. There was also one for Star Guardian where they had like all these different maps and you had to complete all these different missions. There's also one for the Odyssey skins where you had to play as like all the different characters, and if you were happened to defeat all the missions, you got the Odyssey Zig skin for free. And I really wish they would bring those back because those were a lot of fun. Does anybody ever remember going AP Caitlyn? And just to preface, AP Caitlyn was never like a real thing. It was just kind of like a fun build thing you did. So Caitlyn didn't always get headshots off of her traps and off of netting people. Her traps used to do like magic damage over time, similar to how Nidalee's traps do that. And then Caitlyn's net used to just do flat magic damage. It didn't do the headshot. It still slowed, but it was predominantly just doing magic damage. But, it was really funny to do, especially if you actually killed somebody with it, but dear God, was it pretty much useless. And I don't want to see any of you guys actually going AP Caitlyn, because it does not work anymore. Does anybody remember when you weren't able to actually, like, pick what role you were? So, there was still blind and draft pick, but you never got to, like, assign what role you got to play. You just got lucky. So you hoped that you were, like, first pick, so that you could get the role that you wanted to play. You would have to, similar in blind pick, if you've ever played that, you would have to call out what role that you preferred. And so sometimes you would have games where you had, like, you know, everybody was an ADC main, or, you know, you had two people that played the same role, and whether or not you got that role depended on if you were first pick, and you just hope to God that you got to get your role. Sometimes people were nice, but, you know, most of the time people were like, I only play this role, I'm getting it tough shit. So you had to know how to play, you know, at least one champion in every role, and dear God, I felt so bad for people who had me as a jungler. So if you watch my other video, I talked about how you didn't always get to pick your roles, and I remember when they changed it so, like, they were testing it when you could pick your roles, and I have the old icons, if anybody has those, where they had them for each role. But, anyways, so it moved from, you could finally pick your roles, and it moved into dynamic queue. And if you don't know what dynamic queue was, it's pretty much flex queue, but there wasn't a differentiation between solo queue and flex queue. It was all just mushed into one. So you could have a full team of just solo players go against a full 5-man pre-made, and this was your solo queue rank. And it was pretty awful. It also felt really bad when you were playing solo and then you had a 4-man pre-made on your team, so no matter what, you had 4 people ganging up on you. I mean, they did end up changing that, but it was still, like, not fun. And I'm really glad they got rid of dynamic queue, because, man, was it awful. Do you remember when you had separate ranks based off of what role you played? So you could have been, like, say, diamond in top lane, but you could have been bronze as support. They did this because people were complaining about, getting autofilled just like they are now, but this was their solution. So, of course, you had a bunch of people, when they were playing off-role, they're like, oh, well, I'm losing LP only in this role, so I don't really care. Which is kind of dumb. Like, I don't know why they thought that was a good idea. I mean, they got rid of it, like, shortly after the season started because they saw how bad it was, but I just, like, who thought that having separate ranks for different roles was, like, a good idea? Does anybody remember like AP Tristana? And if you don't, they really never changed Tristana's kit to like make it more AD. All they really did was they changed what her E does, they changed out her W resets, and they changed the AP scalings when they tweaked her. So her E wasn't always able to be targeted on towers, and it didn't always explode when you auto-attacked 5 times or after a certain amount of time. What it used to do is it used to do ticking damage, similar to how like when you step on an Italy trap, it hurts you over time. And so you would use that and it had high AP scaling. And then you would then jump in and you would use Deathfire Grasp, think of an Ari charm, it works like that. And before you landed with your W, which also had a lot of AP scaling, and then you would use your ult, which scaled 100% on the initial impact, and then it scaled 80% on the small explosion. So you pretty much were like, I'm gonna hurt you a little bit, but then I'm gonna hurt you a lot, and that really wasn't healthy for the game. Does anybody remember when you used to be able to actually see what your MMR was? And for those of you who don't know what I mean, it didn't always tell you like you were bronze, silver, gold. It would give you the numerical value of what your MMR shows. So it would give you a number like 1200 depending on how like well you played. Your MMR still exists, but you just can't see it. Now, when they switched over to the tier system like it is now, you used to be able to kind of like get an idea of where your MMR was. You could look it up on a site like op.gg, and it would tell you, hey, you're doing relatively good for what rank you're doing. And then Riot took that away. So your MMR still exists, you just can't see it. And it's really frustrating because there's like no reason why like you shouldn't be able to see your MMR. Does anybody remember like pre-warp Kayle? And if you don't know, it's pretty much like the same as it is now. There's a few notable differences that like did end up changing her. So her W and her R are pretty much the same. Her R just now does some damage when the duration is over, and then her Q is pretty much the same. It still does it slow, except it used to be a point and click. You didn't have to aim it. But then the biggest differences were with her passive and her E. So she didn't gain range based off of what level she was. She gained range from just using the ability on her E. It wasn't a toggle, it had a duration of 10 seconds. By the time you have it fully leveled at around like level 7, I believe it was, you would pretty much be ranged all the time, granted if you had the mana, because yes, it did cost mana to be ranged, and you used it very quickly. And then her passive used to be armor and magic resist shred. So the more you attacked them, the more damage you ended up doing, and it scaled up to 15%, where it almost felt like your Kayle was doing true damage. And old Kayle was definitely broken. Hey, do you remember the summoner spell Revive? And if you don't, the name is kind of self-explanatory. It was a summoner spell that you used to revive yourself upon death. And, yeah, it sounds like a broken summoner spell, but it really wasn't, because the cooldown was like 10 minutes. So you got to use it like maybe 3, possibly 4, and if you're really lucky, 6 times, because, you know, hour-long games, am I right? Yeah, the only time you ever took it was when, there was Earth, and if you don't know what Earth is, it's out right now and you should, but just the off chance you don't, everything is reduced and it doesn't cost any mana. So it was like, instead of a 10-minute timer, it was a 5-minute timer to use Revive, and you would take Revive TP. So you would die, revive yourself, and then TP back to lane just to die again. And since you guys wanted clips of these old things, here it is.